Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here with my co-host Teo. We're here to talk about some great topics today. We're going to do another fantasy draft.
Fantasy draft.
And you know what? We're just going to get straight into it. We have a fantasy draft. We're going to go over certain cabinet positions as well as other positions in the government that lead America that we thought, hey, what if we just fantasy drafted it?
Yeah. And to give a little background on that, I think we were looking at the current cabinet members, and we noticed it was just kind of like, well, who is this person and how did they get there? And we were a little curious about that. So we were like, not like celebrity style, but like from more known people who would be people we would put in for the positions. Not that we've done a lot of research, not that we've done our like super due diligence as who's the most experienced in the industries, but based on some popular names out there who are more recognizable, where would you plug them in for these types of roles if it makes sense for them to be in the role at all?
Yeah, my thought was to go with more unconventional people that might come with creative solutions to the problems of this country. Right now, across so many different departments in America, people can definitely complain about how they have huge issues, giant budgets, and time after time, we see people appointed to these positions. And when we look at their qualifications, we're like, well, that's an interesting pick. Or, with their time in office, not much really got done. One could argue that sector got worse. So that being said, we came up with a group of people, and we decided that we'd fantasy draft it. See who Teo and I could come up with to be potentially a dream team. One could say a dream team of cabinet members. I know I have a thought for some dream team picks. So
it'll be interesting to see if we have any crossover because it's fantasy draft. Might have a pick that you had that you can't go with your first pick. Yeah. I'm just worried that I'm going to have two picks taken because I don't have a lot of third picks. But snake style, we agreed to of back and forth on who has the first pick each round. We'll go cabinet by cabinet. We have the order. So I had the honors of doing the first pick last time. So for the Dream Team Cabinet Fantasy Draft, what's your first pick?
Let's talk about the first department, which is Treasury, right? So my pick for the Treasury Department is Warren Buffett.
That's crazy because he was one of my dark horses and he wasn't on the list.
Pretty sure he is on the list.
Not on the list.
Oh.
But that's who I picked too. Do you care to elaborate why? That's crazy.
Warren Buffett, he spends very little money on things. He's a great investor. I think he has a solid pulse on the market. He has an incredible track record when it comes to making money. He knows how money operates. And I think because he's only had to focus on himself, if you gave him a position where he had to make decisions for the country and he had to dedicate his, last few years on it, I think he'd do a good job. I don't think anybody can look me in the eye with a straight face and say Warren Buffett wouldn't be at least an interesting pick for Treasury.
I agree. My pick for the Department of Treasury is Jamie Dimon. I think that's someone where Warren Buffett would have been my pick, so this is my backup pick. But Jamie Dimon, he is the CEO of the biggest bank in America. I think he does an incredible job of growing it while still having J.P. Morgan focus on small businesses. And I think that by him being in charge of the Treasury, he could both handle our money right because he's a banker, but he could also do a really good job of making sure that our Treasury is focused on the right sectors. So Jamie Dimon, my first pick, but still would have taken Warren Buffett if I had my true first pick. All right, for the next sector, we're doing the Department of Defense, and my pick for the Department of Defense is Jocko Willink. I think that he is someone who read his books, so it feels like it gives you a bit of a insight into how they think and how they operate. Former Navy SEAL, very practical guy, really good communicator. He has his own podcast, so he's able to communicate, and I think he focuses on leadership. And at that point in the government where you're in charge of the Department of Defense, you need to both understand people as well as military, and he's a great combination of both that people could really get behind. So Department of Defense, Jocko Willink.
I'm taking Jim Mattis, former. He led under Trump. He's an outstanding general. I think he did a really good job during the Trump administration of holding things down. I think he could do it again. I think he would be a great dream team head of the Department of Defense.
Second time in a row, crazy enough, not on the list I received, was the person I had later on the list that I thought.
I didn't put him on the list?
Didn't put him on the list.
Oh.
You sent your list in the public list, but it's all good. It means we were on the same page.
Okay.
Little conniving.
My bad.
You're good.
Okay, do I go?
Yeah, you're first on the next pick. Yeah.
This was hard.
Hardest one for me.
Yeah, this was hard. And I feel like my pick is going to be a little bit, to some might be controversial, but, I just thought I'm going unconventional. I'm going to go Vivek Ramaswamy. Yeah. He has a law degree. I believe it's from Stanford or Yale. I think he has a good pulse on the beat on what appears to be a good forms of justice. I think he recognizes a lot of injustices going on throughout the country. And I think he truly cares about America, and he would do a good job of upholding laws and making a good decision in terms of, who, the Attorney General would and wouldn't focus on. So that's my pick.
All right. My pick for the Department of Justice is Chris Voss. And he was a curveball for me, and I thought about it, and this was the hardest category for me for justice. And the way I thought about it was, he's a former FBI negotiator, so he worked in the FBI, and he was a really good negotiator, which means he's able to hear and understand the challenges of anyone he's talking to. And if there is a thought process behind who should be in charge of our justice system, it's someone who can fairly listen to those, whether they're a prosecutor or a defense, and there's someone who understands our justice system, and hopefully the FBI would do that. So I am going with Chris Voss for my Justice Department. And then switching over to the Department of Labor, I am going with Ray Dalio. Now, Ray Dalio is my pick because even though initially I wanted to have him go more the monetary side, I think that he understands systems and he understands cycles. And whenever you can study things like that and he understands the economic cycle, you also understand how jobs work. And Ray Dalio being able to use a principle-based system for how we're going to do jobs in America makes complete sense to me. And I think he'd be a great curveball Department of Labor.
Okay. Hey, that's a decent pick. That's a decent pick. I'm going to go with Jeff Bezos. If anyone can put America to work and have people grinding and figuring out different ways how to have American labor be put to good use, it's him. Obviously, he founded Amazon. He has one of the most powerful companies that the world has ever seen. And I think the way he looks at challenges and overcoming them is a huge asset. And the fact that America doesn't have somebody like that running the Department of Labor, underutilized resource, Jeff, I know you love going to space. I know you love, making cool companies. But what if you took those skills and you applied it on making the Department of Labor the most efficient department it could be? Yeah, if you're listening.
It's a very good pick, and I completely understand it, but I think that you put him in the wrong role. I would have put him under the Department of Transportation, which we're going to get to in a little. But I think he understands logistics on how Amazon was able to deliver packages in 1 or 2 days. And if he can have a package delivered in 1 or 2 days, he can have our transportation system in America killing it. So I think the Department of Labor might have been a slip up, but we'll see. You're building your dream team, so I get it. You have the next pick too for Health and Human Services. So
I'm going to go with Andrew Huberman.
He was my backup. You want to talk to why?
Yeah, so Andrew Huberman for me, he's done a lot of research on wellness, and he's done a lot of videos on health. And right now in America, there's a giant problem with obesity as well as a bunch of health concerns in America. I think if Huberman dedicated his time to finding different solutions for Americans, and he was at the helm of the ship for that, I think we might be in a better place. I think he'd advertise and promote the right type of wellness Americans need right now.
I respect that pick. He was one of my top 2 picks. I'm going a little more aggressive. So my pick for the Department of Health and Human Services, David Goggins. And my thought process is, if there's someone out there who can motivate America to become people who push themselves harder and make sure that they're really achieving all they can achieve from a health perspective, even though he might be on the most drastic side, I think he can get Americans a little more motivated and a little healthier. So even though he might not have as much industry knowledge, he's the type of guy who would both quadruple down on making sure whatever he does for the department is going to be the best version possible, and he'd be inspirational for America. So David Goggins, my pick for Health and Human Services. All right, my next pick is going to be for the Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD, and I'm going with Barbara Corcoran. And I think that she's someone who has understood the real estate industry. She was able to make quite a little real estate empire, and she did it all in New York, where if you can make it anywhere there, you can make it anywhere. So I think she'd be really good at understanding kind of how to deal with cities. She's been around, so she's a business person now, and she's really capable and understanding of the industry, and I think she'd be a great HUD director.
I'm going to go with, this is a dark horse, Donald Trump. JK. I'm going to go with Dwight Schrute. He's actually the founder of Ryan Homes. And if anybody knows anything about Ryan Homes, they build a lot of homes. One of the biggest issues in America is that there are not enough homes for Americans. People have nowhere to go after work sometimes. So they're living in apartments. But if somebody could build a bunch of homes in America, I think Dwight Schrute could be that person.
Awesome.
All right. And so we're going to transportation now, right? That's what it looks like?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with Elon Musk. I think Elon Musk is a good person who could do transportation well. Obviously he's created Tesla. He really understands self-automated cars or self-driving cars. I think between Tesla, and he's also worked on projects to secure traffic. I think if this guy can get a rocket to Mars, he can figure out how to make high-speed rail systems as well as improve the current highway system. I think it'd be a good pick for that.
That's a great pick. Once again, you took one of my 2 big ones. Put him in a different spot than I would have put him. I think that Elon Musk makes sense in the Department of Energy, but hey, you make a solid case for him being there. I am completely on the hook for who I would do for that now. So my first and second pick have been taken, but my pick for the Department of Transportation would be Joe Rogan. Why do I pick Joe Rogan? Because I think when we're talking about transportation, and if my top 2 picks have been taken, then I got to pick someone who's able to communicate, and he can communicate well. And even if he's not very versed in the industry, he can get the right people in the room, and he can direct them to do transportation well. So it's a curveball pick, and not a lot of people would look at him, but I'm going Joe Rogan, Department of Transportation.
Wow. Okay. I'm excited that you chose him because I would have never guessed that. I don't think anybody at home would have ever guessed that.
It might be the biggest curveball on the map.
That is definitely probably the biggest curveball on the back.
All right, I have the first pick in the next round too, which is also messed up because of how this draft has gone. But my pick for the Department of Energy is going to be Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And the reason I picked him is because low-key most people don't know, but he did a lot of work for environmental litigation back in the day. And if you know anything about the Department of Energy now, it's dealing with a lot of environmental concerns. Can you use gas? Should you be using sustainable resources? So someone who might not have as much in-industry experience as to how to manufacture them, he still understands the environment well enough to be able to have a pro-environmental thought process while having a realistic understanding of how we're going to get to that point while still being in a good balance of 2 types of resources. So he is my pick for the Department of Energy.
Solid pick. I'm going to choose Lyndon Rive. He is the co-founder of Solar City. He has a huge background in renewable energy. If you go through his background, I think he would be a great pick for Department of Energy. I would have also liked to use Elon Musk here, but my pick for transportation got messed up, so I had to put him somewhere before Teo got to pick him. So.
Wow. We're just getting each other back and forth for the steals, huh?
Yeah, I mean,
this has gone way right of where I thought we would. Like, I didn't have this list in my mind.
Yeah, well, the other thing is, a lot of these people are so good at so many things. You could put them in you could put them in different positions. You know, you could musical chairs them once a year, and they would still do a great job. And so then I double, right? So now I'm on education. For education, I'm going to go Sam Altman, the founder of ChatGPT, OpenAI. And I think just the fact that he's created something like that everyone's using to cheat in school now, he'll find a way to make sure people don't use this resource and actually learn something. He's a brilliant individual. I've heard him on podcasts. I think he'd be a good pick for Department of Education. If you were like, Sam Altman, you have to figure out how to make the education in America better, he'd figure it out. Maybe he'd ask ChatGPT.
My pick for the Department of Education, Robert Kiyosaki. And the reason I say that is because I think our education system has gotten away from practical ways to help out our youth understand life lessons. And it's gotten so memory-based and it's gotten so standardized test-based that we've gotten away from truly educating. And I think Robert Kiyosaki would be someone who actually challenges people to kind of look at education from a lens where we can give people practical tools and practical ideas for how they can become adults, profitable, understanding responsibility, and being able to actually be educated in the real world activities you want to learn. So he'd be someone to shake up the education industry, and I think the education industry needs a good shake up right now. So he's my pick for the Department of Education. My pick for the Department of Veteran Affairs is Sean Ryan. And the reason I picked him is because I think that he has a great, once again, my whole team has been based around not only what's your experience, but what's your communication style. Do you understand and can you hear the people you speak to? And I think when you look at his podcast, what you see is that he's really trying to hear the stories and experiences of the people he interviews, which goes into a huge part of our veterans. We need to hear them. We need to actually make sure that we're providing them the services they need, and having a shakeup in the Department of Veteran Affairs to really give them a level of service they deserve, which is the highest level of service possible, you got to start by hearing him again. So he would be a good pick for that.
Okay. I would go for Department of Veteran Affairs. I'm going to do Tulsi Gabbard. She's a vet. She's ran for president. She really cares about our troops. And I think she'd do a good job. You know, she seems like a reasonable person who has a lot of experience and knows the needs of veterans. And, you know, that's my pick.
Okay.
Okay. And then I go again. Homeland Security.
Nope. Homeland Security.
Yeah, Homeland Security. This one is going to throw everyone through a loop. Homeland Security, Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg, because he has everyone's info. He's tracking all of us. He's stealing our data. And everyone today has a phone, whether you're a normal person or a criminal. Mark Zuckerberg probably has info on everybody, you know. He's worked with the FBI before. I'm sure he'd do a good job working with them now. So Mark Zuckerberg is my pick for Homeland Security.
Great pick. This is the topic that has been most messed up for me by the draft, both because of you and I made some picks myself that I think shot myself in the foot. I'm genuinely looking at the list and saying, who could it be? So I'm going to go for Homeland Security pick. I am going to go Cameron Hanes. I think that he's someone who really just is on the list that I recognize. But also at the same time, he pushes himself hard. I think he's a man of integrity, and in our day right now, we need someone who has America's best interests at heart, and he just seems like a good guy. So even though I don't think it's a super logical fit, that's who I'm throwing in there. And then with the last first pick, this is really tough for me because I could have gone two ways. But for my press secretary of America, I'm going to go... Do I go with my original first pick or my one that I didn't think I'd have all the way to here and I messed up? I'm going to go Patrick Bet-David. Was between Patrick Bet-David and Oprah. I think either one would do an incredible job. I think Patrick Bet-David is someone who has a really good pulse on how to communicate messages in today's day and today's society specifically. He understands both social media as well as kind of what's going on. So PBD, my pick for press secretary. Who are you going with?
For press secretary, I'm going 50 Cent.
Wow.
The reason I'm going 50 Cent is I think if you need a press secretary, today, a press secretary has to be somebody with thick skin, has to be able to have a solid comeback really quick, has to be able to communicate profoundly, you know. And I think 50 Cent is a great communicator. Now, how he's communicated in the past is definitely up for debate, you know, but I will definitely give him that his message gets across. He's an entrepreneur. You know, he's a great actor, and I think he'd be composed with, you know, a lot of these interviewers now, a lot of these journalists. They're, you know, very mean to people who are press secretaries. And I think 50 Cent would handle that well. I think if he got to chop it up with the president beforehand, he'd be able to present the message well and also troll the trolls.
Wow. We had some curveballs in this thing, huh?
Yeah.
What was the hardest one that you had to adjust on the fly with?
Energy.
Who got took from you?
Elon Musk.
You took him from yourself.
Yeah, well, it's because if I didn't use him, you were going to use him. So that's kind of why.
It was more just a knock on mine.
Well, I knew I could use Elon Musk in three places. The three places I really liked Elon Musk for was energy would have been my perfect. Transportation, I did really mean that. Low key, I could have put him in HUD or labor. The reason I could have put him in HUD is because like there's just a shortage on homes, and if there's anybody who knows how to start something like building a bunch of homes, he could easily get that done. Like if he had to do it, he could get the people together to fix that problem. I just don't think it's a priority or something he really thinks about all that much. But if you put it up to him, I think he could fix that issue.
Yeah.
And in terms of like labor, I mean, he employs so many people. I think he could find ways to help the workforce if you needed to.
That's the one I see the least. I don't see, just because you give people jobs doesn't mean you understand how the labor system works. He's someone who provides, like, innovative solutions. Labor is more like understanding how the labor like environment is. I don't know, different opinions, but I get the other three. I think Elon Musk and the Department of Labor doesn't go how you think it goes.
I think
he fired 90% of Twitter, because that, like, he loved the guy, but he definitely, I don't think he has a macroeconomic labor perspective that's good. He's all about efficiencies and like as lean as possible and all of that. And I think labor is like, how do we navigate this whole labor market?
I think he could figure it out. I think he could analyze it. One of the most brilliant people on earth. I think he'd efficiently find good places to put people. I think if you were like, this is what you have to do, he could figure it out.
Well, and you could say that for anything.
Well, I don't think he'd be good at health and human services.
Why not? There's an issue. You have to figure it out. He could find an innovative solution for how to make us all healthy.
He's not healthy.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, a lot of curveballs. My defense, I was happy to get Jocko, but then when I lost Jim Mattis, he was my Homeland Security, so it got back and forth. But anyway, that's that. Let's keep it moving. We'll see. Hopefully, we ask the people out there, see who they think is the stronger team. I don't even know, man. Honestly, to be honest, when I'm hearing your team and my team, I don't know who wins. I don't know who wins.
Let us know who you think wins.
Yeah. All right. And I was so on the fence with press secretary between Oprah and PBD. Don't know who I would have gone with.
Oprah would have been good.
Oprah would have been a good pick.
I almost had her for health and human services.
Yeah, could have happened. All right. What do you want to talk about next in our second topic?
Let's do communism/socialism. Why we love or hate it. What about you? You love communism, hate communism, indifferent? What are your emotions toward communism? I feel like you're a big communism guy just by the tie.
Definitely not a big communism guy. Maybe as far away from that as possible. This is an interesting topic. I think just before we even get into what our thoughts are, we grew up in America, so I think we've heard certain things, but then as you keep going through it, you start studying it, and at least I did, where it's like you had to learn it in school, and then you kind of just understand conceptually how they work. And the communism, socialism thing is very different than when we had our previous episode and we talked about American values. I don't think if you go back to old school American values, and I would argue even today, that communism, socialism, they align closely to what we talked about. So I am anti-communism, socialism. I think that it's an interesting time, though, because it has found ways into our system. I think no matter what, we can both agree that there's more people in the U.S. that support those concepts now than probably any other time I can remember. But what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's kind of funny. A lot of the people who support communism haven't lived under a communistic regime. They've lived in capitalism, where you have the freedom to make different choices. I personally am not a huge fan. Fights and struggles over communism have caused issues all over the world. Now, capitalism obviously has its issues, but it's like the world isn't perfect. There's never going to be a perfect system. Capitalism gives people the options to rise or fall. And, a lot of times with these socialist or communistic type of governments, the people feel very oppressed and like they don't have the option to kind of, advance in the economy, and if you look at the list of countries that haven't done well under, communist/socialist regimes, China, Cuba, North Korea, the Soviet Union, Venezuela, Cambodia. I mean, it's not a great track record for that type of regime. And people always point to some of the social countries with socialism. They're usually smaller. When it comes to like larger scale versions of it, I don't really see any.
Big point.
I don't see any large scale countries that do well with those systems. I see a bunch of failures. I see a bunch of countries that have tried these systems and have had huge famine, have had a decline in efficiency and innovation, a decline in businesses, a decline in freedom, a rise in dictatorships or civil wars. You know, I definitely wouldn't say with any sense of certainty that it is going to work in a large scale. We just haven't seen it happen. I'm not interested in seeing it happen in the United States. Now, if China wants to do it, more than they have before and see how it goes, yeah. But a lot of people have been arguing that China has become more capitalistic, and that has been a lot of the growth that's happened in China. They're moving away. They've moved away from a lot of their old hard communistic type stances, right? There's a lot. There is more free market happening in China now than there was like 30 years ago, 40 years ago. But
yeah, and I think that's super interesting. So if I were to break it down, I'd say old school America was a capitalist country. Old school China was a communist country. But now what you're starting to see, which is super interesting, is America now is a capitalist country with socialist principles trickling in, and China is a communist country with capitalistic principles trickling in. So it's no longer old school America versus China. What you have is two new versions, which are kind of like, well, is it better to be weighted heavier towards capitalism or weighted heavier towards communism, socialism, with the other one in the second seat? And I think that that's a very different question. But I feel very strongly that when you're talking about it, capitalism is a beautiful thing if you can get it to work. At first, it was kind of weird because I was like, oh, is this a controversial thing to talk about? And I don't think so at all. I think that there are people who may be either misinformed or they don't truly understand how the systems work. But we have use case examples. We're not talking about theoretical. We're talking about practical way in the world when you've implemented each system, which one works and which one doesn't. And I think that the track record is something that you can't ignore. You can't just say, oh, well, they didn't do it right, or oh, they didn't, you didn't get to see how it could work. Well, we've seen enough instances of how it does work that we know what the negative outcome of each side is, and I think that's a huge thing people don't pay attention to. If capitalism doesn't work, you see what a bad capitalism country does. If communism or socialism doesn't work, you see what a bad communism or socialism can turn into. And when you're looking at it that way, it is clear as day that capitalism is a much better system than when you try to implement communism or socialism. Like, it's not only which one's better, but it's which one can be worst. And if you're looking at it between those two, I'll take the worst capitalist country over the worst communist socialism country any day of the week.
Yeah, no, I agree. When you look at when things kind of like piggyback off what you said, when you look at capitalism at its worst, what you see is opportunities for people to rise. Like, even if everything's going bad, there's an opportunity for somebody to find a solution to fix the problem, right? While in communism, when things are going bad, well, you don't have the freedom to choose your job, or you don't have the freedom to try out different solutions, because there usually is a smaller option for resources, right? Resources, whether it's like food or opportunity for employment, or fewer resources for just freedom in general, right? Because the government kind of controls your life in every aspect. If in America, if you have an idea or a passion or if you have something, you can pursue it. No one, the government is not keeping you from pursuing it. There may be challenges, but nobody's stopping you from taking a risk, right? There's no guarantee that it's gonna work, but that's the whole thing with capitalism, right? There's opportunity, and in theory, there's equality of opportunity in theory. But in socialism / communism, there is guarantee of equality of outcome instead of equality of opportunity, and that is one of the big issues with it, right? We shouldn't all have the same outcome because we all put in different efforts. We all have different intrinsic and extrinsic values and properties about us that are going to bring forth, they should bring forth different results. If they're not having different results, well, then that's a problem, right? That is a huge problem. I don't think in any respect, me and Jeff Bezos should have the same things in life necessarily, right?
He's earned more.
He's earned a yacht. I have yet to earn a yacht. If you guys would love to help me earn a yacht, let me know. But if me and Jeff Bezos are sharing a yacht, that's a problem. That's a problem. We shouldn't have the same things right now, maybe one day, right? But as of right now, I haven't done anything to earn that. If Jeff Bezos was in, I don't know, Venezuela, I don't think he'd be on a yacht. I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I get exactly what you're saying.
If Jeff Bezos grew up in Venezuela, he wouldn't be on a yacht.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. And I already know what people are going to say if they're not hearing this in context, and they're going to say, well, capitalism is an economic policy and communism is a political structure. But that's not what we're talking about. And maybe we should be using socialism versus capitalism a little bit more. But, the whole point is that when you look at the human nature of it, it impacts it. You can't just write down these theories on paper. You have to keep into consideration what the human nature is going to do with the system you put in place. And for me personally, I'm super against capitalism, socialism. I am so comfortable saying that because I think you've seen the worst of it and you've seen how it works out, and it just doesn't work. To the point where I was like, I was kind of going through all the different things that are pros and cons versus each one, and the top 5 reasons why socialism doesn't work and why I hate socialism. Number 1, I think that you have to keep human nature involved, and humans, if they don't have something that gives them an incentive or motivation to work harder for something they can pursue, they lose that. And if you're not giving people that in a socialist structure where everyone gets the same thing, people are inherently going to lose their motivating factors. It's been proven. 2, there's a lack of creativity and innovation in those cultures. When you actually look what happens, because there's, like I said, that less motivation, but also creativity doesn't actually produce some benefit to you because everyone's just working under the same playing field, it doesn't inspire people to think that way. And I think that if you have a socialist country, you actually are taking away from the creativity and innovation that has pushed society forward and could push them forward if you put those same people in a capitalistic system. 3, I think it gives people a lower living standard. And people don't realize, they're like, whoa, why can't we all have the same thing? Well, why don't we all look around at the resources? Most of the people I hear preaching for socialism are living at a higher place. And then they're like, we should all be living here. That's not how socialism works. It works is everyone gets the same thing. You're sharing the resources. If you look at the percentage of earners today, let's take the average and give everyone that average. I bet you most people who are out here ranting and raving for socialism don't want the wage that is the average salary in America. You want more. Guess what? In a socialist system, you get the average, if not lower, because they're actually using resources bad, which is reason 4. It has opportunities for corruption and inefficiencies. Whenever you have a centralized group that is a large bloated group making the decision for the masses, bureaucracy and corruption is going to come in. And I think when you have a socialist system, over time, it always grows, it gets bigger, and it wants more control. And that is a perfect segue to number 5, which is a loss of personal freedom. We are all sovereign individuals. That's one of the strongest things of what makes us special in America. We all feel like we have a right to freedom. In socialism, when everyone's on the same playing field and you're all under the socialist system, you're submitting to a socialist centralized government and you lose elements of freedom. Personal property, the right for your creativity and to work for what you earn. All of these things are taken away from you and you don't even realize it until it's so deep in, but you lose what makes you free. And that is my 5 reasons why I hate socialism.
Nice. Those are some great reasons.
You got any reasons?
I don't really have any reasons. But you know what? We can talk about, just in that vein, we can talk about, the best companies have come out of capitalism.
Yep.
Amazon.
Yep.
McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
Tesla. Uber. I mean, Uber's great. Uber's great. Think of a great company. It's come out of capitalism. Let me give you a list of all the great companies that have come out of communism. That's my list.
That's good.
I don't really have much. But if you have any companies that have come out of communism that are great companies that are global today, send them over.
And I guarantee you if they did that, they're a capitalist company.
Yeah, they're probably a capitalist company. And you know what, man? They don't exist. They don't exist because you're not allowed to have those companies. Because they're not, because they wouldn't really be companies. They'd be subsidiaries of the government.
Of the government. Preach.
And unfortunately, like every government in the world, most things that come from these governments are awful.
Yep.
I don't
Inefficient.
Inefficient. I don't know anybody who's super thrilled with the services their government are providing. I don't know. Is anyone thrilled with their services their government is providing?
I'm not hearing when I have my pulse to the market, I'm not hearing people really ranting and raving on how much they love their government provided services. Yeah. And that's in a capitalist country. So yeah. I can only imagine in a socialist country how they feel about their services.
Yeah. People love companies, though. People love businesses, right? Like we just talked about, people love the fact that they can get their Amazon package in a day or less than a day. People love to, although it may not be good for you, people love to eat a Big Mac, right? Taco Bell. We talk about Taco Bell all the time, right? My brother just got a Tesla. He loves Tesla. People who have Tesla, they rave about Tesla. American company, right? People love business.
Yeah.
Business runs the world, runs the United States.
It's exactly what I was saying. It's not only the business. Look at the types of businesses. The innovation that comes out of capitalism, not only are they the best businesses, they're the ones that are leading thought processes. When you're under a communism or socialism system, it doesn't inspire creativity. You're sharing everything. Whenever you have capitalism, you're trying to think of a groundbreaking development that no one's seen before so you can be the first one in the market and take advantage of it. It's how the economy is always propelled forward. It's people pushing the ladder, trying to find ways to make things new, better, faster, more efficient, cheaper, whatever the case might be. That's what capitalism pushes. Socialism, it doesn't happen, and it's never going to happen. And I think the last point I'll say is what you said is super important. When I hear all the defenders of socialism and they give me their use case examples, they're talking about smaller countries. When you have bigger countries, or want to apply a theory to the world, you have to think about how it works in mass. And I've never seen a big socialist/communist country that was super efficient. So I feel strongly that I'm not a fan of socialism, and I don't plan on being one soon. And I think if we can have a fair, pure capitalist system, you can actually see a lot more development happen.
Another great company, Apple, right? People love iPhones. iPhones did not come from a communist country. Just putting that out there.
So they're made there now?
Yeah, they might have been made there. And you know what? They're in awful conditions, generally speaking. And that's the government over there. You know, they're making people, they don't really have much of a choice, right? They probably didn't get to choose that job. That job was just kind of, hey, this is your job. Yep. You're going to get paid this amount. You know, if a business started across the street and was like, hey, we're going to make, a competitive the government would be like, okay, I'm going to need a giant piece of this steak.
Yeah.
I mean, even now, like we talked about, like China's become more capitalistic, but they still crack down
Oh, yeah.
on their own companies. Like, look at Alibaba.
Yep.
Alibaba has been forced to make all types of crazy maneuvers. Who knows where Alibaba would be if the Chinese government didn't have their hands around its neck?
Yeah, they kind of rein them back in quite a few times.
Yeah.
Whenever they seem like they're really trying to push the envelope, they're like, nope, we don't need that.
Yeah.
Not in our best interest.
Yeah.
And that's coming from the centralized government.
Yeah.
They are the decision makers. It would be, put it this way, it would be tough to be a CEO in a communist socialist country. Like, if your company is founded there, you're not going to be thinking of any groundbreaking ideas. Or if you do, you're like, let me run this by the government first. Like, that's not how it should be. You should be on the forefront, doing things people don't think is possible and creating solutions people didn't even know were able to be done. So I don't have to go much more on it, but I do know no socialism.
Yeah. After this podcast episode, we probably won't be allowed into China.
I wasn't planning on going anytime soon.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah.
Anyways, well, we can move on from that. Did you
I'm
have
good.
anything else on
I'm good.
socialism?
I got it out of my system.
Did you want to talk
Keep
about
America capitalist.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't know if we were going to go into some leaders or anything like that. But you know what? Yeah, let's keep it moving.
Let's keep it moving.
So, the last topic we want to touch on today is the pros and cons of cryptocurrency. There's a lot of fear-mongering that one day we're going to go completely digital. And, that's... Some would argue that's a scary concept. Some would think it's really cool. It's smart. It'd be easier to do your taxes. How do you feel about this?
I looked at this topic from the lens. I thought it would be a good combo with what we just talked about, which is one of the things I keep hearing proposed, which is centralized digital currencies. And that's probably the thing I'm most concerned about. Not as much around cryptocurrency. I think there's pros and cons to it, like you said. But I do feel I have a stronger stance against centralized digital currencies. And I think that that's where the trend is going. And I wish we would kind of reverse course. Because for those who don't know, a centralized digital currency is saying that instead of having cash out there in the marketplace, or if you had, you're paying through your credit cards that are done by private companies and then you pay them, that's how you do transactions. No, now there's a central system that all of your digital currency is held on. So any money you have is on this central database. And the government has access to it because they're the ones providing it. And I just don't think that's ever a good combination. Having the government in charge of your in control of your money can lead to some scary effects. Like if you're talking about them having the ability to turn on or off your bank account or freeze funds or any of those things, I think that whenever you have that centralized and they have the complete control over that, we have to hold our government accountable to how they're using our funds or how they're controlling our funds. And all you need is one or two bad administrations in play. And now guess what? If you don't toe the line or you don't do exactly what that administration is saying you should be doing, well, guess what? Your bank account just got frozen. Don't like that idea. I think that as we've seen, perspectives change. There's different schools of thoughts. That's okay. That's how America works. What I don't want America to be under is, depending on the administration in control, they can decide whether or not you have access to your money because of how you view things or things you're saying. Free speech and being able to do certain things and not have your assets frozen by the government is a pretty hard line in the sand I go. And the thought of centralized digital currencies is one that I am saying is a big con. What about you? You were mentioned a wider spectrum, so what were you thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of touch up on what you're saying, the point of money is to have freedom, to be able to trade with others, to be able to provide yourself with a sense of security, and to be able to have sustenance, right? Be able to buy groceries or anything that you need. That is the point of money. And then one of the great qualities that comes with that freedom is being able to make those decisions, right? We work really hard to get money so we can live our own life, be independent, do what we have to do at the drop of a dime. If it becomes exactly what you're describing, where everything is digital, and suddenly, like a utility, the government can turn it on and off, regardless of what political party you're affiliated with. Think about the opposite party being in charge, and them automatically having your freedom, your security, your source of sustenance at their disposal. Republican or Democrat, just think about the opposite side having that power. Isn't that scary? To me, that's scary. I think if you're somebody who doesn't trust the other side, off of that alone, you shouldn't want anyone to have the power or authority to be able to control your whole life. If someone freezes your bank accounts, what do? Unless you have like even today, if someone froze your bank accounts today, how long could you survive? Do you have enough cash to hold you over for a day, a month, 6 months, a year? And if you do, great. But most Americans, I feel like, don't. So, already in some ways, we're already under a cryptocurrency, not a cryptocurrency, but a digital currency already. Most of your money is already in the banking system. So chances are you're already vulnerable in that sense. So if it was mandated that all of our money at all times, right, you couldn't pull cash out of a bank anymore, well, welcome to a new form of communism. Welcome to the government has both their hands around your neck at any time, and it's already that automatically becomes a social credit score. You're already now thinking to yourself, I have to be careful with what I do or say at all times because, well, I don't have control over the things I mentioned, right? My monetary situation, and that's scary. It should scare everybody. Nobody should feel comfortable about that. The only reason people like digital currency is it's convenient, right? Apple Pay, and you'll be able to pay things with your eyeball. But don't be lazy. Get some cash.
You brought up some terrific points there. I agree. And I think one of the questions you have to ask is, what is the role of government? And then the follow-up question is, does government have a role with control over my money? And I don't think the answer to the second is yes. I think when you think about it, aside from the IRS supporting the government with taxpayer dollars, which is a whole nother conversation, other than that, the government really shouldn't be too involved in your savings, your checkings, your spending, all of that. You report your activity to the government and they tell you what is your taxable income. But once they start kind of hopping over the fence and saying, not only are we going to tax you, but we're just going to be in control of your money for the entire year, or at least having access to it through this digital currency, they've just assumed a new responsibility, because currently that's the banks, if you were to do it, or the credit cards, they have it. But once the government starts doing it, so they monitor and give you access to your funds, and they also tax you at the end of the year, it's a scary combo. It's like, when did government start saying, hey, one of our roles is, we're going to just handle money, all of it, for everyone? Don't remember that being mentioned in the Constitution. And I think that what you mentioned is people are sacrificing their access to their own funds based on convenience. It's easy to swipe a credit card. It's easy to do Apple Pay. Carrying cash around isn't as easy, but it's also the easiest form for you to control what you're spending. One, you feel it when you spend it, so you might actually be more disciplined with your spending. But two, no one can really determine when and how you use that cash aside from the vendor that you're trying to exchange with. It's you and a vendor relationship, as opposed to you and a third party and a vendor, which currently is credit cards in the bank, but they're proposing is the government and then the vendor. I don't want the government in between me and a merchant. We can handle that on our own. I feel we're both adults. We're capable of handling that, whether it's cash or credit cards. But once they're the ones having the guidance over that process, no thank you. I'm good.
Yeah. The whole point of cryptocurrency at first, when it was decentralized, I kind of liked it because it gives it gives people the option to have a type of money or a type of currency isn't that isn't controllable. So at face value, at first, it was like kind of cool, and it gave people, especially in foreign countries where the government could take all your money, the chance to be able to trade with people in different countries and move from place to place if needed, right? Like if you're a refugee. It gave people a bunch of different options. And there are issues right now with the crypto space, right? There's a lot of price volatility. There's no regulation on it, but that was in some ways the appeal to it. So if the government gets involved with the crypto space to the point where everything's regulated, everything has to go through the government, kind of defeats the purpose, and it really just feeds into the whole government takeover of your freedom. Kind of leads into some socialist aspects.
I think it's funny that cryptocurrency was a way to open up or free your ability to spend money, and now the government's flipping it into a way to control how they spend your money. I would imagine the initial creators of cryptocurrency would not like the concept of crypto being used by the government.
Yeah.
I think the founders of crypto are not fans of governmental centralized currencies,
Right.
digital ones. So it's funny, you make a good idea and the government's like, let me get a piece of that. Let me. I don't like you guys doing that. Let us control it. We got this. We're in charge.
Humans were like, this is a way for us to make money, trade, and create a banking system for people who can't bank without the government intervening. And the government was like, oh, hell yeah. I'm going to figure out a way to control you guys with your own system.
Yep.
And I'm going to need some tax. I'm going to need some access. And I'm going to take this concept and roll with it and create my own crypto, my own American dollar that's digital. Let's do it.
I think the ironic thing is that the government didn't have a problem with crypto until they realized that there was so much money being transacted without any taxes reported around it. I genuinely think that's why they decided to get their foot in the door as to are they and how are they regulating crypto, because it was around and kind of under the marketplace, and that's a kind of a negative side of crypto, which is it can turn into a black market of transactions. But at the same time, I don't think the black market is why the government got involved with crypto. I think they saw the masses going to it and they were like, oh, no, you're not spending all this money without being taxed on it. Let us in. We're in this too. So, interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah. So we're both against total digital currency.
Against centralized digital currency, against socialism, against communism.
Yeah.
Those are my stances.
Yeah. You know what? I was very pro cryptocurrency when it first came out. I'm kind of zagging.
Zag?
Yeah.
A good zag?
I just think, I'm starting to think the whole thing, with the way the government's going about it, it's kind of defeating its own purpose. And now I'm like, we could have done without it. It's not really helping. I think at this point now, and obviously like Monday morning quarterbacking it, it's like, we just gave the government another avenue on how to control us. We should have foreseen that they would have took this brilliant idea and used it for evil. And, I think it's only a matter of time before the government completely takes over crypto to some effect.
I'm half with you on the zag. The other half is that if you continue with crypto, it still can do the job, which is it's an alternative form of currency. So if they go centralized, you use XYZ coin off of their central digital currency, and maybe it's your way to zag the central digital currency. It still gives you an alternative method for making transactions not on a centralized government digital currency.
The only true Zag, I think, is cash.
Cash is the OG. Big fan of cash. Miss cash. Wish people still used cash. The cash system was a good system.
Cash and gold. Cash and gold.
Cash is king. Cash is king.
Cash is king. Unfortunately, it's...
Hey, I still use cash.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with cash.
We talked about this on another, I forget what podcast and when, and we were saying, and you're like, you keep cash on you? I keep cash on me.
Yeah, we did talk about
In my wallet, there's always a little cash. If my credit card gets declined, I can pay for my gas with a little cash.
Yeah. I know we were talking about real estate earlier today, not on this podcast, but on a different...
the other podcast. Yeah, that was a good one.
Podcast. Well, what do you think about the digital real estate, this metaverse?
Stupid. So dumb.
You're not gonna use crypto to buy some virtual real estate?
You could have the nicest virtual metaverse in the world, and I will never go. You will never see me in the metaverse. No interest. Like the real world. Staying in the real world. Wish we were still using real cash.
Yeah.
Why? Would you go?
Blockchain real estate? If everybody's there, I might go.
I'm not going. I like the real world. What's wrong with the real world?
No, I mean, there's a lot of things wrong with the real world.
Yeah, that's a complaint.
You know what I mean? It's a good escape. It's a good escape, Maybe if we get into the virtual world now, we get in early, Like, remember when they say, oh my gosh, I wish I could have bought real estate in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s? We could get in early in the virtual world right now. Be rich.
Controversial opinion. Why don't, instead of us creating alternative virtual worlds, we just work all together to fix our existing world? What's wrong with that?
That's what I'm trying to do.
If you get your cabinet in, you're saying it's a better world?
Yeah. Listen,
even with the cross picks?
Give me my fantasy draft list, and if you guys really try hard and all of you guys stay uncorrupted, right? I think we could actually do what you're saying. But if we don't put this list together, I'm going to go to the virtual world.
I'm interested to see whose list people would pick.
Thank you for joining us today, staying with us through socialism, crypto, and our fantasy draft.
Another one in the books.
Another one in. Shout out the Pope.
Shout out the Pope.